Chris is sitting on the roof of the Clark house, filming and talking about the events that took place 9 days after the arrival of the National Guard. A fence has been erected around the perimeter of the district, creating a safe zone in which a strict curfew is in effect. Since everyone outside the fence is reportedly dead or gone, Chris is alarmed to find a flashing light from a house in the dead zone. Travis is preparing to attend the announcement of Lieutenant Moyers, the commander of the safe zone. Madison is angry with him for playing a man of the people with the soldiers, while she manages the house and the children herself. Chris shows Travis his shots with the light and insists that someone in the dead zone is still alive. Travis rejects this idea and orders Chris to help Madison around the house. Madison finds Nick relaxing in the pool and asks why he missed taking painkillers. Nick assures her that he feels better and doesn't need the pills anymore. Lieutenant Moyers announces that the safe zone is officially free of infection within a 6-mile perimeter. He ignores the influx of questions from anxious residents and reminds them that they are lucky people in one of the 12 safe zones south of the San Gabriel Mountains. After that, Alicia and Ophelia collect weekly rations for their families. Ophelia is flirting with one of the soldiers. Lieutenant Moyers ambushes Travis and asks him to convince neighbor Doug Thompson to undergo a mandatory medical examination. Mrs. Thompson tells Travis that Doug has been acting strangely since the previous night. Travis talks to Doug, who is paralyzed by fear for his family's future. Travis convinces Doug to get tested and assure the family that everything will be fine, regardless of whether he believes it or not. Doug agrees. Alicia wanders around the Tran house and finds a letter in the bedroom. She reads it and cries. Lisa takes care of Hector, a sick patient, in his bedroom. She tells Cynthia, Hector's wife, that she supports his condition with a morphine drip. Nick looks over the fence in the backyard and sees Lisa and Cynthia leaving the house. Later, he sneaks under Hector's bed and pumps out morphine, directing it between his toes. Chris shows footage of Madison flashing a light. Although she was skeptical at first, she eventually agrees that someone may be giving them a signal for help. Ophelia and a soldier, Corporal Adams, kiss in his truck. He tells Ophelia that he could not get the medicine she requested for Griselda, as the military is stocking up on medicines to capture the city. Travis and Madison have sex in their car. Sensing that Madison is still angry, Travis reproaches her for worrying too much about Nick and Alicia's safety. Madison responds by telling him that he should pay attention to Chris and do something about the light signal that Chris discovered. After Travis sarcastically asks if he should tell Moyers about this and ask the soldiers to investigate, she shares her doubts about the military, who did not provide them with any drugs, information, or communication. Maria Thompson is in a panic with her daughters and informs Travis that Duck is missing. Travis promises to find him. The next morning, Madison signals the dead zone with a flashlight from the roof. The same house gives her a response signal. Travis finds Doug's empty car at the perimeter fence. While playing golf, Lieutenant Moyers tells Travis that Duck was taken into custody after soldiers found him crying in a car. Moyers claims that there can't be mentally ill people like Duck in the camp. Travis mentions the light signals and tells Moyers the location of the house. The latter waves him off, insisting that they have already searched the area. Cynthia introduces Lisa to Dr. Bethany Exner, who works for the government. Dr. Exner informs Lisa that Hector has been transferred to a medical facility. She also says that she knows that Lisa is not a real nurse, but praises her nursing skills and asks her to continue helping her. Madison sneaks outside the safe zone and discovers that the streets are littered with corpses, some of them are not infected. She hides from soldiers who, as a precaution, march along the road and shoot corpses. Dr. Exner examines Griselda and recommends surgery at the nearest hospital. Daniel insists on accompanying his wife. Dr. X does not consider Nick, despite the fact that he insists on his frequency. Nick jokingly calls Lisa a drug addict for telling Dr. Exner about his addiction. He hides his panic when he finds out that Hector has been transferred to the hospital, depriving him of access to morphine. At the Tran house, Alicia draws Matt's drawing on her arm with a needle to make a permanent tattoo. At home, Madison tells Daniel that she made her way outside the safe zone and saw dead uninfected people on the street. Daniel expresses his deep distrust of the government, and then asks Madison to look after Ophelia if he and Griselda do not return from the hospital. Madison discovers that Nick has been rummaging through a neighbor's house in search of drugs. She slaps him in a rage and slaps his hands. Nick retreats to the bathroom, and Madison goes to the garage for a drink. The soldiers arrive to take Griselda to the hospital, but push Daniel away. Then they take Nick away against his will. Madison yells at the soldiers and insists that Nick is not sick. Lisa begs Dr. Exner to let Nick stay, but Dr. Exner only encourages Lisa to join her at the hospital. "I love you," Lisa says to Chris, getting into the truck. She tells him that she will definitely come back. Chris angrily hits the window, watching Lisa drive away. Madison looks at Travis and blames Lisa for it. In her room, Alicia rereads Mrs. Tran's letter, a suicide note to Mr. Tran. She describes the horrors witnessed after the outbreak of the epidemic. "What I saw was predicted," she writes. "What I saw was pious, and I think it's overdue." Travis goes to the roof in confusion. He sees someone giving a signal from a house in the dead zone. Douglas Thompson is sitting in a pre-trial detention cell at a local military command post. A fellow inmate dressed in an elegant suit mocks Doug, saying that he is not strong enough to take care of his family, but fortunately his wife is attractive enough to find a man who can do it. The soldiers hear Dag's sobs and take him away. C. Trent approaches Nick, his only remaining cellmate. "So," he says, "who the hell are you?" Back in the safe zone, Ophelia throws objects at the perimeter gate and yells at the soldiers for taking Griselda. Corporal Castro intervenes to restrain her. Adams intervenes and comforts Ophelia, insisting on taking her home. Frustrated, Chris asks Travis how they are going to pick up Lisa. Travis reminds Chris that Lisa tends to help others, so she voluntarily left with Dr. Exner. In the medical department of the command post, Lisa takes care of a patient under the supervision of Dr. Exner. Dr. Exner informs Lisa that Griselda is recovering from the amputation of her leg, but does not answer Lisa's questions about Nikki. Madison finds Susan Tran's suicide note in Alicia's bedroom and realizes that Alicia has returned to Tran's house. She doesn't find Alicia there, but instead finds Daniel and Ophelia in the basement, where they tied Adams to a chair. "That's how we'll bring them home," says Daniel Madison. Adams tries to assure Daniel, Madison and Ophelia that Grizzle Dennick will return as soon as they are cured. Ophelia insists that Adams does not know where they are being held, but Daniel interrupts her. Upstairs, Ophelia tells Madison that they can trade Adams for Griselda and Nick. In private, Daniel tells Madison that the exchange will never take place, and informs her of his plan to torture Adams until he gives out information. Madison objects, but doesn't stop him. Travis warns Moyers that other members of the community will revolt if Nick, Lisa, Griselda and other neighbors are not returned soon. Moyers capitulates and orders Castro to prepare his men to take Travis to the command center. Left alone with Adams, Daniel unpacks razor blades, talking about his past in El Salvador, where, in order to survive, he conducted torture interrogations for the military-led government. Adams, in desperation, reports that Grizzle Dennick is in a command center 2 miles away, but that's not enough to stop him from being tortured. Driving through the dead zone, Moyer notices an infected woman and orders Travis to shoot her. Travis refuses, and Moyer asks if Travis thinks she's still human. "If that's what you think, then we're just a bunch of murderers," he replies. Travis picks up the rifle, but can't pull the trigger after seeing a sign with the name of the infected Kimberly. Moyers takes responsibility and shoots himself in the head. Dr. Exner discovers bite marks on a newly admitted soldier and orders him to be euthanized immediately. She explains to Lisa that they can't risk leaving potentially infected patients alive, so that they all don't start to recognize the taste of the neighbors. After receiving a distress signal, Moyers and his men drive to a building overflowing with infected. Castro orders Travis to stay in the car. Daniel wipes the blood from his blade after cutting off Adams' arm. Adams begs him to stop. Daniel asks what cobalt means after hearing the code word in Adams' radio broadcast. Alicia finds Chris moping in the yard and invites him to explore the evacuated house of a wealthy family. There she changes into the chic clothes of the owners and admires herself in the mirror. Chris sees her and quickly turns away, embarrassed. Later, they put on a ball gown and a tuxedo and proceed to destroy the luxurious house. In the cell, the guards measure Nick's temperature and detect a low fever. They begin to take him away, but C-Trend convinces Melvin, the commander, to let Nick stay in exchange for chic cufflinks. Nick asks why the Trend saved him. Trend explains that, being a heroin addict, Nick knows how to survive. He shows the key to the camera and asks Nick to help him escape. Stunned, Travis listens on the military radio in the car as the soldiers fight with the infected. Castro returns to the car and informs Travis that they are returning him to the safe zone, stating that Moyers will not come. When Travis reminds him that he was supposed to be taken to the command center, Castro admits that he is fleeing to San Diego, to his wife and daughter. Madison hears Ophelia scream and runs to the Tran house. Ophelia runs out the door in tears. Inside, Daniel laments that Ophelia may never understand that his torture of Adams was necessary for survival. Did he tell us what we needed to know? Madison asks. Lisa finds a dryer with a lot of blood. She decides to go further and find cells for detainees, after which she goes in search of Griselda. She's trying to contact Griselda. Dr. Exner discovers Lisa and tells her that Griselda is in septic shock. Travis finds Ophelia sitting in the yard. Inside, he asks Madison if she knew about Daniel's plan to torture Adams. "Tell me you didn't know," he says. Madison can't answer. In the basement of the trances, Adams tells Daniel that the military locked up 2,000 civilians in a local arena after people started turning over and trampling on each other. Madison arrives with Travis and asks Adams to repeat what he said earlier. Adams tells Travis that Cobalt is the command code to begin the military evacuation from the Los Angeles basin and the humane destruction of the surviving civilians. He says the evacuation will begin at 9 o'clock the next morning. Griselda dies in a hospital room, muttering something about the war and Daniel. Dr. Exner pulls out a pistol with a firing bolt and tells Lisa that traumatic brain injury. The only way to guarantee that dead people won't come back to life, no matter how they died. Dr. Rexner is about to shoot Griselda, but Lisa takes a gun and shoots Griselda in the head. Chris and Alicia begin to see military vehicles with soldiers driving through their neighborhood at night. They notice that the soldiers are not paying attention to what is happening around them. Alicia notices something is wrong. Daniel goes to the arena to confirm Adam's story. Approaching the door, he hears the herd of infected inside growling, pounding on the door.